this book. Is Skubik here? He could tell you. Rick, you've been around that long, haven't you?
I was here just the year after that when they went back to Democratic control.
Wow, well, good. All right, you ready for us? So I just wanted to start, so I read a story today that attributed a quote to me, and I wanted to just put some clarity in. So this is the Growing Michigan Together Council report. You guys probably remember Gretchen Whitmer handpicked the experts to sit and come up with this report. And now my recollection is there wasn't even a Republican senator that contributed to this report.
They wouldn't appoint my nominee.
Right.
Yeah.
So even though the order required that, okay? But regardless of the way this was set up, we can still look to the work that came out of it, right? There's research here, there's some good data here, and ultimately there's some good conclusions they came to. So I just want, when we talk about a coordinated economic growth plan, those are not my words. Those are the council's words, okay? So I read a story that said those were my words. It's the council's words. So I just think when we look at Gretchen Whitmer's hand-picked committee to help solve the problems facing the state, what I took from it, number one, and it's interesting when you look at this on page 8, the strategies here. Number one, develop an economic growth plan that establishes Michigan as the innovation hub of the Midwest and America's scale-up state. What does that say? Well, if we have to develop it, that means we don't have one, okay? I'm just going to go a couple more here. So page 25, okay? Michigan lags in median income, educational attainment, and talent retention and attraction. We lack a forward-looking, cohesive approach that leverages our distinctive competencies and invests in positioning Michigan to best compete for high-wage, high-growth jobs and the talent they require. All right, I'll bring one more, maybe a couple more. Number 27, page 27, Michigan needs a roadmap to transform our economy to a robust innovation ecosystem that will create, scale, and grow high-wage jobs. All right, page 28. This is the last one. For Michigan to compete and grow, we must develop a bold, coordinated economic growth plan. And it goes on, okay? So I just want to be clear. These are not my words. These are the council's words, okay? Now, why is that important? Because here we are for the 6th state of the state, right? After 5 years of Gretchen Whitmer, we're told this is the greatest hits, right? And I think that really gets to the core of what this is. You know, over the first 5 years of Whitmer, we see these greatest hits, these one-off ideas, right? And usually these are designed to attract a lot of media attention for the next election cycle. So they're short-term, all right? What we're talking about and what her council is talking about to truly grow our state and improve our economy, we agree with at least I agree with the council, we need to develop a bold, coordinated economic growth plan. That is not happening, right? After 5 years of Whitmer, we don't have that. And because, you know, I'll just quote some statistics here real quick from the council, because I look at this and say, this is really a indictment of Gretchen Whitmer's first 5 years, right? At the end of Gretchen Whitmer's first 5 years, and we can get in, you know, their details, and they're these one-off little things that you're going to hear today that are really, you know, these short-term ideas that are designed to generate a lot of press and attention toward perhaps national political ambitions, but are not a bold, coordinated economic growth plan. And that's why, after 5 years, we're still here today. So just to kind of walk through here, according to the council, Michigan's median income was once 114% of the national average. Today we rank 34th in median income across the United States. Now, somebody told me that since this was reported just a few weeks ago, it's dropped even further.
39th, I think.
Okay.
Bridge had it.
Yeah, so is that right? It's dropped even
I
further.
didn't write the story, but yeah, it wasn't good.
So it's dropped, and that's just in a few weeks, right? But, so we're 39, okay. Next page, page 7. Currently, fewer than 33% of Michigan students are proficient in reading or math in the 4th and 8th grade. And 4th grade reading proficiency for black students in Michigan is only at 10%, lower than any growing peer state, okay? So that's her report. That's not me, that's just what her experts say. And then let's look at Governor Whitmer's signature campaign promise, which was to fix the roads. This is what her report found. On page 7, our infrastructure is crumbling and facing growing threats from a changing climate. Michigan's highway system ranks among the worst in the nation, and communities struggle with aging water infrastructure and flooding. Okay, now there's a lot more in here, I'm sure you all read it, but that's what, so this isn't about what I think, it's just a, look, let's go to Governor Whitmer's experts. Our roads are in very poor condition. We need to work together, right? So notice it says coordinated, okay? So what you need is not to give, so we gave a group of experts, Whitmer did, they sat down in a room, they worked through it, they came up with this report, okay? Why can't the politicians do that? Why can't we just, you know, Governor Whitmer is our leader. Why can't Governor Whitmer say, you know what, I'm gonna get off the national stage, I'm gonna get out of the New Yorker, I'm gonna stay off, Meet the Press, I'm gonna go away from the national campaign trail with Joe Biden, and I'm just gonna sit in a room here in the Capitol and problem solve with both parties to solve these problems. Because regardless of what she says, the 5 years of greatest hits, it hasn't worked. We, as she said, as the report said, our infrastructure is in bad shape. Our roads are among the worst in the country. Our education scores are failing. The report talks about our cities, our places that are not attracting young people. Our people are graduating college and they're leaving the state. Because we don't have a strategy, the governor does these one-off things. It hasn't worked. So after 5 years of Whitmer, it's failed. Now here we are with another list. But ultimately, you look at her, you know, we had the budget last year. We spent a record $81 billion after the report, or before the report came out, right? So the report was supposed to tell us what to do. We spent all the money before that. And you guys know, they spent all the money with no strategy, and fortunately, the Whitmer administration even couldn't spend it fast enough, because you saw they made so much interest off the people's money that we have some money left to spend, but still we missed the opportunity to make those transformational investments like this council laid out, and we're back to a set of one-off short-term ideas again. And so I guess my call is we need to step back, we need to look at a coordinated growth strategy, and we need to solve the big problems facing our state: education, performance. And by the way, I just want to explain something real quick. So when we talk about education funding, first of all, do you notice every year the politicians say record education spending? Okay, every year it's record, right? So we went and looked at that, and you know we closed under Republicans, we closed that per pupil gap, so everyone is at the same level. But what we found is we're actually $2 billion above inflation per pupil in our education spending, okay? Now, if you use other creative measures, you might come to other, but what we should be measuring it by is how much money is getting in there, and then how much money is getting in there per student. And we found it's over $2 billion more, even when you look at inflation over the period that's being discussed. So the issue isn't just funding, and we agree with increased funding. You know, I voted for budgets that delivered record funding, but it's about the performance and the accountability, measuring performance and having accountability measures, and that's where we're missing, because you look at the education scores, and there are other statistics about our math scores and how low they are too. So that strategy needs to focus on solving the education performance problem, fixing our infrastructure, making our cities attractive, and also ensuring our college graduates stay in the state. I would just lastly say, before we turn it over to Leader Nesbitt, the Whitmer strategy of just handing out billions of dollars to battery plants, has been the wrong focus. I mean, you look at, the jobs we're trying to attract are the high-paying jobs. And the high-paying jobs are in different sectors, but our strategy has been luring in these manufacturing jobs, many of which have low wages. So just a couple things that, I came to the conclusion of. I mean, we gave a number of changes, but say it was $1.7 billion that we gave for the battery plant. We got the numbers from MDOT. That would fix every critically rated bridge in the state. So the taxpayers have to decide, what's more important, $1.7 billion to Ford or fixing every bridge in the state that needs it? We looked at, with the money they gave the Goshen project, they could have covered 67,000 Michigan families with childcare. What's more important? We look at the one, our Next Energy project, which has been getting a lot of press lately. They gave them $236 million. That could have been a $12,800 bonus for, each state and local police officer in the state, right? I mean, we have 6 of the most violent cities in the country in Michigan. So what's more important? And so I would say part of a bold, coordinated economic growth strategy is investing in our safety in our communities. It's investing in childcare. It's investing in our infrastructure. And it's not just a scattershot approach across the state of giving money for battery plants. Those are tactics to cover and Band-Aid for the lack of a strategy. That's not a strategy. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Leader Nesbitt.
Well, thanks, Leader Hall. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming here today, and appreciate the opportunity to kind of quickly go through last year and what I'd expect on coming up this year. One thing is that last year, the governor and the Democrat majority spent the whole year trying to figure out how to make it more expensive to do business in Michigan, from repealing right to work, increasing the income tax, to passing a California-style Green New Deal mandate that'll increase energy costs and decrease reliability here in the state. They also squandered about a $9 billion surplus that went to, again, not a coordinated strategy on trying to figure out how do you fix roads, bridges, how do you improve education, infrastructure. Instead, it was just really picking earmarks for certain legislators around the state and kind of spread it around. And then also spent the year repealing accountability measures, third grade reading, using student growth as part of teacher performance reviews, looking at ways of repealing simple grading of school buildings on whether they're improving the education of students. And so last year, unfortunately, was spent on what I say is kind of the big 3 Democrat trifecta. That's big union bosses and getting wins for them, big environmental left, and big trial lawyers. Those are kind of the 3 main political constituencies as we saw, and they're more concerned with coastal liberal billionaires and what they think instead of Michigan businesses and how do you compete and win in the 21st century. The report that came out in December, again, we didn't have somebody from the Senate Republican caucus on that commission. She refused to appoint Senator Lindsay. Yale grad, worked for a Fortune 500 company, Green Beret, veteran, young family, came back to Michigan, a state that he grew up in. They didn't want any of his comments or influence, and that's why he had to do his own letter. He did his own op-eds and opportunities. It was unfortunate, but you read through the report, and I think the governor wanted them to just say, you need $6 billion tax increase. That's what the governor wanted to hear from. And instead, what they said is that we actually need to figure out cost savings, efficiencies, and it was a damning report for the first 5 years of Governor Whitmer's administration of saying your personal income's lagging. We were increasing working population under the Snyder administration. We're losing it again now. We're losing good jobs. Indiana is able to pay a tenth as much in terms of tax credits and other things to get the same factories in Indiana that didn't come here. And so there's a way to how do we compete and win in the 21st century? And I think that's what we're trying to get at is instead of trying to figure out some PR focus group initiative that you're going to hear tonight, like, okay, $25 million for rebates for people that buy new cars. What about those people that can't afford to buy a new car, that's trying to buy a used car, that's trying to figure out? And if it happens to be made by union members, then you get even more. Now, I was talking to some auto dealers, they say that might last 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And so what does that actually change in terms of behavior? The housing plan that she's introduced, and I keep saying it's all about keeping up with the Newsoms, is what the governor has been doing this last year in terms of what she's doing, because those are kind of the two main governors jockeying along with Governor Pritzker if something happens, if Biden decides not to run before the convention. And they did a similar housing program that cost nearly 50% more than what was expected. This is the challenge when instead of motivating the private sector, making it cheaper for capital to be invested and grow jobs here in the state of Michigan, instead they're trying to pick winners and losers, and all that matters is what is government largesse and picking winners and losers through the tax code. And so as we start the year this year with Governor Whitmer's income tax increase that increases taxes on every working family in the state and every small business in the state, let's look at ways at fixing our roads, fixing our bridges, reforming education to have accountability and choice within the system, and trying to grow the economy instead of trying to build up a base of a national campaign. So with that, I think we're happy to take some questions and talk about it, but I hope you guys enjoy the day.
The performance, yeah.
The performance,
Yeah.
top hits. So.
Leader Hall, you voted to create the SOAR fund. Now you're criticizing the very projects that it was set up to support. What changed that, did you see that has made you shift your position on that issue? Is it just that Democrats now control the legislature?
So the way I would explain it is, the SOAR program was set up, I would say many of us expected we would see a diverse economy, right? I never thought it would only be used for basically electric battery plants. At the time, we were talking about attracting life sciences to the state. We were talking about, and this came out, in the Detroit News, about semiconductor industry. So, the way I see it is because of Whitmer's policies, it's expensive to get businesses to locate here. It's regulatory policy, it's education, it's workforce, it's all those things, tax policy. The state has had to write checks to attract people here, all right? Now, unfortunately, under Whitmer, almost all of this fund, billions and billions of dollars, has gone only to electric battery plants. Secondly, there was always going to be legislative oversight in that process. So legislators could look at the proposals and then reject the ones that don't make sense. Now, when you look at the proposals that have come forward recently, they pretty much pass on party line. Democrats want more of these battery plants, and the Republicans have looked at them and said the return on the investment isn't good. So, if you look at the Ford deal, and it's strictly the numbers, it was a bad deal for the taxpayers. We've talked about this in many places, but if you look at how much per job Michigan is giving for these jobs that pay $48,000 a year, it's a bad deal. I think it was like almost $200,000 per job now when you factor in the fact that they're scaling back the jobs, and MEDC won't even tell us if they can claw the money back.
Well, one other thing, and again, looking at SOAR, like the whole point when it was passed also is that you had annual appropriations each year. And so you look at what the budget was and what you could put in the account. And then on the back end, you had the appropriations committee to do the final authorization on it. And what the governor's doing, and what she did a year ago in that partisan vote that they pushed through to try to stop the initial income tax cut that happened last year, and then make the EITC and some of the pension exemptions a partisan vote, is that she wanted to cut out the legislature completely from SOAR. And so you have the automatic funding over the next 3 years, and now what the governor, my understanding is the governor's wanting is to add another year so that she doesn't have to deal with Speaker Hall a year from now of having to look at economic development projects. And she doesn't want to have to go back to the Appropriations Committee for final approval. And so, again, even though I may not have been supportive of SOAR 2.5, 3 years ago, whenever it was passed, it was one thing where if you're having an economic development project that was water, wastewater, that you needed to improve rail siding or worker training or bridges or have off-ramps, like, okay, that makes some sense. But just this cash handout that they've been doing to try to, what I'd say, bribe some of the most profitable multinational corporations to the state, it says that you're not competitive. It says you're not able to compete and win in the 21st century. And so let's look at a wider thing on the regulations, on taxes, on education, on infrastructure to compete and win in the 21st century.
And the other thing is, since that time, our lack of competitiveness has grown through the policy choices that Whitmer and the Democrats have made. So that starts with repealing right to work. And I've told some of you, you know, when Governor Whitmer invites me, I sincerely try to help attract businesses to the state. You know, when we're trying to attract businesses to the state, you know, let's put our partisan hats off. Let's work together to convince those businesses that we're trying to be a state that's welcoming and wants them. In some of those meetings, I've heard directly from those employers that are looking at coming to Michigan that repealing right to work would take us off the list, okay? I've heard that, the governor has heard that, okay? So we know that. And then we went forward and did it. The Democrats repealed right to work, putting us in a position where we're attractive to fewer of these companies. Then you look at what they did with this energy bill, right? This energy bill will raise energy costs for the state. And we heard, I mean, remember when Ford didn't come the first time and they went to Kentucky? Well, they cited energy costs. That was before this plan, right? So that gap is widening to the point where now I feel the approach is we got to work on the fundamentals. We've got to build this coordinated economic growth strategy to get us in a position where we can consider whether these cash deals are going to land those employers, because we're growing that gap, we're not shrinking it, and that's the wrong approach.
Governor is talking about bringing back a version of the Good Jobs for Michigan program. Do you have any thoughts on that specific proposal?
I mean, with what they introduced in the Senate, it looks like it's, you know, kind of DEI jobs for woke corporations. I mean, it's every little favored left-wing Democratic interest group that they're trying to do. And a year ago, I put it out pretty quickly. It's like, if the governor is serious about economic development, I'm going to continue to work with her in a proactive manner until they repeal right to work. And you saw that I worked on even some of the supplemental bills last year, some of the other things, and then they repealed right to work. And that tells me she's not serious about economic development. That's too bad. But at the end of the day, I think we got to get back to the fundamentals instead of picking winners and losers and trying to give huge checks to some of the most profitable multinational corporations. And it just amazes me that it's the Democrats that are pushing this, is they go ahead and make this, you know, they do all this class warfare stuff, but at the end of the day, they're the ones rewarding some of these largest, you know, corporations and developers.
Well, Good Jobs for Michigan is a Snyder-era program.
Yeah, when I was floor leader in the Michigan House, it never came up for a vote, so.
So you opposed it then?
Yeah, because it never came up to a vote in 15, 16. So I've been pretty consistent on that.
Who do you both recognize as the chair of the Michigan Republican Party?
So, you know, my take, and, you know, I give the media, you know, really.
I consider us as the leaders of the Michigan Republican Party right now, so.
So the media really focuses
Because
on this, and I just want to be clear that, you know, the House Republicans have set up everything that they need in order to win. And we've done that in the environment we're in. So, you know, you don't want to be reliant on a party because a party is a group of other people that are making the decisions for you. You want to control your own destiny, and so we've set up the organization to do that. And you know, it doesn't get reported as widely as it should. I mean, most quarters, I beat the Democrats with the House on fundraising. We've had the best fundraising that we've ever had for House Republicans. And that'll continue into the future because people are rallying behind the House Republicans and our vision, which we're laying out here today for Michigan. So they're rallying behind us, and in my view, you know, that's something that's going to be sorted out between, you know, the delegates and the RNC. But, you know, there should be more reporting on what we're doing because we're beating the House Democrats with great recruits, with great fundraising, and a much better organization than we had in the past. And that's why we're going to win.
And at the end of the day, you go into the fall, is that there's Democrats that have 3 seats that Trump won in 2020. And so just looking at the board itself, that I think the House Republicans are in a very good strategy to take back the majority this fall. I mean, 22, you look at everything that happened in 2022, is that still it was 400 votes out of 40,000 cast in 1 seat that would have tied the state house. 400 votes out of 130,000 cast that would have tied the state senate. And that was with Governor Whitmer winning re-election by 11 points. And so you look at the history and what's there. The Democrats said going into November of 2022 was all about abortion. Well, that's now in the Constitution. That's you know, taken care of. The day after the election, they said it had nothing to do with abortion. And they started to ram through all this left-wing, very liberal, progressive agenda that I think, as you look at this fall, voters are going to reject. And then the voters also, on top of it, with President Biden, the war in the Middle East, war in Ukraine, no border, you know, open borders, you know, that are, you know, legal immigrants pouring across, $2 trillion deficits. So you look at the environment going into this year, comparing the leadership of President Biden with former President Trump, and I think it's a recipe where if I was a House Democrat, I'd be very concerned.
And just lastly, I would just say, does that really justify all the coverage that's going on? I mean, you know, you look at the number of stories that all of you have written about the Michigan Republican Party. Is that equal to its impact on the state? And I would strongly disagree with all of you if you think that it was, because you look at all those problems I laid out, they deserve more coverage, okay? And that coverage is being taken away by this Michigan Republican Party thing. We should be covering the problems that are facing the state and the debate that is going on about solving those problems. And that debate is going on in this building. It's not going on anywhere else. So I know these controversial subjects are attractive, but I encourage everyone, keep your focus on the things that matter the most to the people, and ultimately, it's going to be the conversations here today.
So you don't believe a functioning state party is needed to not only win back the state house, but also the congressional races and the presidential race for the Republican Party?
So my focus is the state house, and like I've laid out, we are recruiting better candidates than the Democrats are. By the way, they never write stories about how unified our Republican caucus is and how well it's working together. But it's working together pretty well, and you see that out on the floor when we're working together as a team under this 54-54 arrangement. I would look at, again, you want to control your own destiny, and the House Republicans will. And we've been doing that in an environment without any competition to raise funds. So we're raising those funds, and we're in control of our destiny, and that's where you want to be, rather than having to rely on all these other people to make the decisions for you, because you can't always coordinate with everybody. I think you look at the Republican donors in the state, and I read all these stories about how they're abandoning the Republicans. Well, if you look at our reports, they're strongly embracing the House Republicans. And so I think the House Republicans is something that's unified the party, and we've demonstrated solid, unified leadership. And so from our perspective, we've done everything we need to do, and we're in great position to win. And honestly, it's going to be a better effort than it was last time. And hopefully you guys will report on that as it plays out.
All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. We're going to wrap up. Time's up here. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys.
One more
Appreciate
question. Do you
the
plan on
question. Thanks, no,
responding
we're
to
done.
recent
Thank you.
allegations and
Thank you. Let's go,
police
guys.
report where you're accused of physically assaulting your girlfriend and breaking
guys.